Hey, I'm Avert, and I'm currently in the middle of working on an over 30-minute long video review of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and I'm trying to get that out by the end of the year. So I wasn't planning on covering the 2023 Game Awards this year, but then I watched them and I have quite a bit to say about it. I personally think that this is the worst showing that they've ever had, and I want to give my reasons for why I think that, as well as giving my thoughts on the nominees that I have consumed. So let's just get into it. For those who don't know what the Game Awards is, basically it's pretty much just the Oscars but for video games. Games receive awards for different categories such as Best Game of the Year, Best Art Direction, Best Game Direction, Best Voice Acting, Best Game in its respective genre, etc. The show is hosted by Geoff Keighley, who has been a supporter of video games as an art medium since even before the Game Awards was ever a thing.
It's a new role-playing video game that is leaving nothing to the imagination. Mass Effect is what it's called. In some parts of this, you'll see full digital nudity. Imagine. And the ability for the players to engage in graphic sex, and the person who's playing the game gets to decide exactly what's going to happen between the two people, if you know what I mean. Now, the game is rated M. Basically, Pandora's box is open. I mean, kids have access to these things, and unless you're hovering over them every second, they're going to find ways to see this stuff on the internet.
We know that all the research shows that violence has a desensitizing effect. Well, sexuality does too. And here's how they're seeing women. They're seeing them as these objects of desire, as these, hot bodies. I mean, they don't show women as being valued for anything other than their sexuality. And it's a man in this game deciding how many women he wants to be with.
Yeah, it's completely incorrect. First of all, you can actually play as a man or a woman in the game. Cooper, have you ever played Mass Effect?
No.
Anyway, now that you have an unnecessary explanation as to what the Game Awards is, considering most people watching this already knows what it is, now we can talk about my thoughts on the nominees that I have consumed. So I do not have a PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X, so I'm unable to play most of the games that are nominated, which if I did have those systems, I would definitely play every Game of the Year nominee, but I don't, so I can only really give my thoughts on Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Wonder. Mario Wonder is my personal Game of the Year. I think it's the best Game of the Year that I've played. Tears of the Kingdom isn't too far behind though, considering the fact that it's really close to being a masterpiece. Breath of the Wild's a great game that redefined open world games as we know them, but I personally believe that it's pretty overrated and it had a lot of issues with it that needed to be ironed out, which Tears of the Kingdom does, as well as adding a lot of new cool mechanics. Tears of the Kingdom is a really technically impressive game as well. A lot of the mechanics, I have no idea how you'd possibly even go about working them in. Ultra Hand and Fuse allow you to stick literally anything in the game together, meaning that they had to program physics depending on what the object you built looks like, which is absolutely insane. And then the recall ability, which lets you rewind things, means that it had to record literally every object's movement in the game, which is absolute insanity, and I think it could have won off of that alone. To absolutely nobody's surprise though, Baldur's Gate 3 ended up winning Game of the Year, which I don't really have any issues with. The game has received unanimous praise across the board, and I've heard nothing but good things about it, so I'm not too mad about it winning. The only other nominee from this year I've played is Pizza Tower, which got nominated for Best Debut Indie Game. Pizza Tower is a really good, really fun 2D platformer, and since 2D platformer is my favorite video game genre, I did enjoy it. Although I think people give it a little bit too much hype. I think people have been gassing it up a little too much. It's a really fun game, but it definitely gets weaker as it goes on. Some of the later levels aren't designed too well. Also, the controls take a bit to get used to, but overall, it's a really fun game that I enjoyed most of my time playing. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10, it's really good. However, Pizza Tower ended up losing to Cocoon, which made the Pizza Tower fanbase extremely mad. So mad that a lot of the Pizza Tower fanbase ended up buying Cocoon on Steam just to review bomb it. I'm just gonna say right now that if you go out of your way to purchase a game on Steam just to review bomb it because it won an award to a game you really like when you haven't even played the game that won, and the developers aren't even responsible for if they get the reward or not, you are absolutely pathetic. Those are all the games that got nominated this year that I've played. However, I can talk about the best adaptation category. I think this is the first time in Game Awards history in which the Last of Us franchise got an award that it actually deserves. The Last of Us Season 1 is definitely my favorite nominee here that I've seen. It's a really well-made show with a good story and great performances by Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, and you can tell that they actually cared about the source material when making this show. As you can hear from interviews in which they say that the Last of Us game has the best story ever told in video games, which it doesn't, but I'm glad that they think it does, because that means they actually give a shit about what they're making. Whereas the Halo show creators were literally boasting about how they didn't play the games. So yeah, The Last of Us Season 1 is great. I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. Also, I'm really excited to see Season 2, considering the fact that Neil Druckmann has stated that he's not going to be changing the story for Season 2. So I'm really excited to see general audience's reaction to the second season, because it's adapting the second game. They get to see if it's on par with Season 1. I especially want to see the reaction of that one person on TikTok who is like, why did no one ever tell me that video games could have good stories? Like, I didn't know that you could put character development in anything that isn't a book. I can't wait for her to see Season 2 and be like, well, I guess video games suck after all. Unless Season 2 ends up actually being good somehow, which is kinda doubtful. Anyway, as for the other nominees, I haven't seen Castlevania Nocturne or Twisted Metal. The Super Mario Bros. Movie is mediocre at best, and while Gran Turismo is a good film, it doesn't belong in the best adaptation category when it really isn't an adaptation. It's a true story in which the game is at the center point, sure, but it's not an adaptation of the Gran Turismo games. That'd be like nominating the Tetris movie, for instance. Yes, it's, well, a Tetris movie, but it's not an adaptation of Tetris. It's more so a story of how the game came to be, so you wouldn't put it in this category. So yeah, that's pretty much all the nominees I can give my thoughts on here, unless you want me to talk about like the content creator of the year, which I've never heard of any of those people except Quackity, who does not deserve a nomination at all. There are so many other gaming content creators you could have put here, but I don't even really give a shit, so that's all my thoughts on the nominees. So now that I've given my thoughts on this year's nominees that I've consumed, I now want to talk about why I consider this year's Game Awards to be the worst that they've done. The first backlash the Game Awards received this year happened before the Game Awards even was streamed, back when the nominations were revealed. The first issue people had with the nominations is that Dave the Diver got nominated for Best Independent Game when it's not an independent game. Dave the Diver is backed by Nexon, which under no standards is an independent game developer. When confronted about this, Geoff Keighley stated, well, people have several different interpretations over what an independent game is. It means different things to different people. You know, it's a broad term. And like that's so stupid, because if it's a broad term, then how do you consider what's an independent game and what's not? Like, when you announce, here's a new indie game coming, how do you know it's independent? Like, it's a broad term, Geoff. How do you know it's independent? The second backlash received by the nominations was for Best Esports Coach, which I could not care less about. But one of the coaches that was nominated literally didn't even do any coaching this year. Like, he himself literally went onto Twitter to respond to Geoff and be like, hey, take me off of the nominee list, which he never did. Imagine if he won. And then for the third strike, Genshin Impact got nominated for Player's Voice Award when the game didn't even come out this year. Like, why does this keep happening? It literally won Player's Voice last year. Like, seriously, Among Us got nominated when it didn't even come out the year it was nominated for something I don't even remember. And then even Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty, that shouldn't be nominated. That's a DLC for a game that didn't even come out this year. If you're gonna nominate DLC for stuff, make it own separate DLC category instead of lumping it in with other games that actually came out this year. And I think Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty actually did win something. So like, why are you even nominating it? It makes no sense. But anyway, those are just the controversies before the Game Awards even happened. Let's get into the actual Game Awards, because I have quite a bit to talk about here. So for context for this next part, last year at the Game Awards, Christopher Judge ended up giving like an 8-minute long award speech. This speech was met with a lot of backlash because the time used on it could have been used for other things, like other speeches, game announcements, etc. So for this year's Game Awards, they decided to do a full 180 course correct and fix the problem, fix in massive quotation marks. So basically, every time someone went to give their award speech, there is a teleprompter in the background with a 30-second countdown timer before it says in big, white, bold text, "Please wrap it up." Ignoring for now that this is an amazing reaction image that I will definitely be using in the near future, this is insanely disrespectful to people giving their award speeches. Imagine you are a game developer. You put your blood, sweat, and tears into creating a game, and then it gets nominated for a game award, and then it wins a game award. And when you're giving your award speech, putting love into it, thanking everyone who helped you along the way, you are looking down at a 30-second timer that counts down to when it tells you to fuck off. And this timer is the same for literally everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a non-English speaker who has a translator on stage and every word you say needs to go through the translator, or if you're accepting the Game of the Year award and you're dedicating the award to a team member who passed away during development. You will have 30 seconds to give your speech. And if your award speech goes on for longer than 30 seconds, Geoff Keighley himself will deploy the tactical violin player to start playing the violin music to cue you off.
To mi familia, gracias para todos. Gracias, gracias, y Coco también. And to my agents, I will thank you later. I'm sorry, I'm going to wrap it up apparently.
So pretty much everyone who accepted an award this year were treated exactly the same as VFX people at the Oscars. The only difference here is that Geoff Keighley didn't make a joke out of it.
VFX stand on the shoulder of our actors. Our performances are everything.
And we need to thank our families.
Before he was cut off, the Avatar visual team asked me to announce that if anyone's interested, the visual effects after party is at CGI Fridays.
The only people in which this 30-second rule doesn't apply to is big-name celebrities. Anthony Mackie can tell members of the audience to shut up for 5 minutes.
Shut up.
The Game Award goes to... Shut up. Shut up.
Simu Liu can literally give a Joker-level comedy attempt for 5 minutes.
All right, first off, I want to address the elephant in the room. My foot's fine, you guys. I did tear my Achilles. I wasn't riding a dragon. I was playing pickup basketball in Miami.
And Hideo Kojima and Jordan Peele get to stay on stage for like 20 minutes announcing this new game with no gameplay whatsoever other than this amazing meme template courtesy of Sophie Lillis. Christopher Judge himself also got more than 30 seconds on stage in which he proceeded to insult the Call of Duty franchise.
No 8-minute speech like last year, but fun fact, my speech was actually longer than this year's Call of Duty campaign.
What?
Which I don't think Geoff Keighley allowed beforehand, considering the fact that, well, let's just say that the Game Awards and Activision are pretty close. Making fun of overworked Activision developers aside, Christopher Judge got a lot more screen time on stage than anybody giving their award speech. Now apparently, all the nominees were told that they would only have 30 seconds to present an award so that they could be respectful of our time allocation and your fellow acceptors. Now what does that mean? Well, it means that the awards were cut short for ad space.
Get rid of belly fat using this one weird trick.
Ooh, I love weird tricks.
Sassy housewives want to meet you.
They do?
Congratulations, you're a winner.
Really?
These 10 child stars went to prison.
Ooh.
Number 6 will amaze you.
That sounds interesting.
Want to get rich playing video games? Click here to find out how.
Advertisements are another thing plaguing the Game Awards. The Game Awards 2023 was almost 4 hours in runtime, and in that time, I swear to God, at least like 75% of it was just ads. I haven't done the math on that, and I'm too lazy to do the math on that, and I don't feel like doing the math on that, and I never will do the math on that, but that is just my guesstimate as to how much of the time was spent on advertisements. I understand that you need advertisements and sponsors and giveaway links that don't work in order to run the show, but at the same time, like, do you really need this many ads? Especially when the advertisements take away time from the game developers who made the games in the first place that allows this show to even function. It's really revolting to see the entire show be pretty much just advertisements, and then whenever an award does happen once in a blue moon, either the person presenting their speech gets kicked off within 30 seconds lest they incur the wrath of the violin player, or they just blow through awards like Geoff Keighley's doing the Game Awards any % speedrun. I could also talk about about how a lot of categories that are really important are just thrown in the pre-show, like accessibility and best RPG. In what world is best roleplay game an award you put in the pre-show? That makes no sense whatsoever. It's as if they don't even care about the awards and they're just trying to get this shit over with. I've seen a lot of big content creators say that this is the best Game Awards showcase that they've had in a while, and I don't see how you could possibly think that. Even if you don't care about respecting the game developers or anybody who put work into making these games, I don't see how you could not be bored watching this. There were like 2 good announcements for games. Literally half of the show or more was just advertisements, and the awards, which are the point of the entire awards show, barely took any time at all. The lack of respect to game developers, as well as the amount of time spent on awards compared to the amount of time spent on advertisements and celebrity cameos, is the reason why I believe that this is the worst Game Awards that they've ever done. So, stray thoughts to wrap this thing up, I guess. The Sega announcement was pretty cool, and that was like the only thing I really cared about in terms of game announcements here. The awards, for the most part, I think that they went to the right games. I don't really dislike any of the award choices. And also, I thought that Timothée Chalamet was the Bill Clinton kid for a second. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Game Awards this year. So in conclusion, I don't know how much power or influence Geoff Keighley has over the Game Awards. I know that he doesn't vote on the games, that's for like over 120 media outlets to decide, but I'm not sure how much influence he has over the Game Awards themselves. You know, like how much time is spent to advertisements, how much time is spent to awards, the way the show is run, etc. But I do know that if he does have control over it, that he should definitely try to strike a balance between not letting people give an award speech for 8 minutes and letting people give an award speech at all. Because as it stands right now, I honestly think that this year's Game Awards was actually worse than this year's Oscars, and I did not think I would be saying that. Honestly, in a way, the Game Awards this year kind of represents everything wrong with the current state of the video game industry. That may be harsh, but the entire year has just been really bad for game developers. You know, 2023 for gaming and video games is probably the best year since like 2017. But in terms of the industry as a whole, I think that this is probably the worst. People have constantly been getting laid off from video game companies, constantly mistreated, constantly overworked and underpaid. Crunch culture is massive. And then at the end of the year, as the final cherry on top, people who worked on these games can't even get like a time to enjoy their moment, you know? Like, don't even get more than 30 seconds to thank their loved ones and everyone who helped them achieve this feat and all their hard work, which is really sad, honestly. But even though I don't really like the Game Awards, I do believe that Geoff Keighley does care about video games and the Game Awards, and I do think he's trying his best to run the show. He's constantly asking for feedback, constantly addressing criticism, and while I don't always agree with him, I do like the guy, right? I do think he has good intentions, and he's trying his best to make this show work, but I really do think he needs to address these problems next year's show, because this was kind of an embarrassment, I'm not gonna lie, but yeah. So that's going to be about it for me for today. What are your thoughts on the Game Awards 2023? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I'd love to read all your opinions in the comments section below. If you want to see my live reaction to the Game Awards 2023, my friends and I streamed it, and that stream will be in the description below. So yeah, that's about it. Hope you have a nice day, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye, everyone. Gonzo didn't even present an award. They said he would present an award on Twitter, but then he went up there, said he played Tears of the Kingdom, cracked some jokes, and didn't even present the award. Someone else did. Why, Geoff? Why would you do this to me? Why?